All right. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us for podcast number 6. Today we have Dan Grosserode with Crete Carriers and Steve Bootsma with Vander. Gentlemen, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Terrific, Scott. Glad to be back in the saddle here with the next podcast.
Amen. We're shaking off, I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but I had a great time down there in San Diego. I think we had a great turnout. Love seeing both of you down there. It was a good time. But let's jump right into it. So, Dan, I'll kick it off with number 1 here. I've got Dan. For listeners who may not know you, can you walk us through your role as Director of Equipment Sales at Crete and what that looks like from a day-to-day?
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm the Director of Equipment Sales for Crete Carrier. Basically, I handle all of the equipment that we deem to come off the road and get it back out into the used marketplace, whether that is through a wholesale side or trade. We don't really do much at auctions, to be honest with you. Kind of not our forte. And retail wise, we don't have any brick and mortar shops. So, I would say that is less than 1% of what we do. And it's usually more to the local guys, that say they need a trailer or, they need a couple of trucks just to offset some things. And, that's kind of the majority of it, but it's, pretty much just me, to be honest with you. I handle everything, for them. I'm sure a lot of the listeners know it and have talked to, Ann Tellinghusen. She's my right hand when it comes to this stuff. And it's kind of just me and her plowing through this and, getting all these, trucks and trailers moved. But we are split up into different divisions. So when you see Crete or Schaefer or Hunt, just to give a little background there, Crete is the overall kind of umbrella mama company for us. And that's been around since 1966. And it's 100% consumer goods and retail store deliveries is kind of the primary business focus there. Then we have Schaefer Trucking, which is approaching actually 88 years old. And we are one of the nation's largest food and temperature sensitive carriers. So we bought that, I can't remember how many years ago now, but they were based out of Pennsylvania. And then we also have the Hunt Transportation Division, which I consider the heavy haul division, which is actually approaching 100 years old. It was started in 1927 up in Omaha. And that core business is like just machinery, irrigation, construction materials, stuff like that. So we're actually pulling from all 3 divisions throughout the year. And that's kind of what people see on my list and what I'm in charge of getting out into the marketplace.
Very neat. Very neat. So, personally, how did you get into fleet equipment sales? I mean, in the asset disposition side of things.
Full circle moment. When I saw that question pop up, I kind of racked my brain about my career path, and kind of weird. Coming out of college, I actually worked for Sandhills Publishing, doing machinery trader and truck paper and auction time and all that stuff, and kind of broke my teeth, to be honest with you, into sales and into this crazy industry of equipment. And then from there went on to working for a local Mack dealer doing their fleet sales, and did that for a few years. And then my current employer actually called me and he said, "You want to grab lunch?" And I was all excited thinking I was going to sell him a pack of like lowboy trailers because I had been trying for like 6 months to break into the fleet. And so I go in there with all this paperwork and, like a printed out slideshow. And about halfway through it, he looked at me and he goes, just put it away. He's like, "We're not going down that road." And a couple months later, I'm working for Crete.
That's awesome.
So were they already selling assets at that time, Dan, or was that something new to the company?
Yeah. So Crete, I can't remember exactly when they started doing it. It was sometime early 2000s. Cause beforehand it was just trade back, right? Kind of a 1-for-1 deal. And then, it switched over. I think I'm the 5th person to do this for Crete. Before it was, kind of like somebody within the company would kind of get shifted into the position. And that's what they did for X amount of years. Then they went and hired somebody non-Crete to handle it. That was Don Larkins is who I took over for.
Oh,
and
sure.
so he was non-Crete. I think he was the first non-Crete person to do it. And then as he was rolling into retirement, they reached out to me.
Great. So what does that look like from like a power unit aspect? How many power units do you guys typically sell in a year's time?
Between trucks and trailers, last year was actually one of our heaviest years. We did about 3,500 total units per year. We're somewhere between, usually between 24 and like 3,000 total units sold. And we're coming up into some of those weird years where obviously fleets didn't get as much as they would have liked to because of the COVID years. So this year it's way lower than what in 2 years it's going to be. And so it's just kind of a moving target each year, but right around those numbers.
So I know you're in the disposition side of things, but how involved are you in the truck spec decisions on the front end?
Zero.
Okay.
Yep. My boss handles all of that. And then he's got a team of a couple guys that go through and look at the specs and look at everything like that. Crete is done a really good job of speccing their units. And so for the most part, it is almost like a copy and paste, to be honest with you. Outside of the kind of OEM force changes that we all see where it's like, hey, we're switching filters or, we're going to this material for a seat type deal. Other than that, it's just, we're going to keep going with what we know works for our fleet.
Well, your lanes are pretty set, so I'm sure you've dialed in for efficiency on those routes.
Yeah. The only time we go off spec is if we have like a customer specific request. So for example, on dry vans, the vast majority of our stuff is swing door. But if we get a contract that requires roll door, we'll go buy some roll doors and keep those in the fleet for however long the contract is, and then kind of see what happens after that.
So what kind of turn process are you on? Are you guys try to keep your units around 4 years at a time, 8 years? What's that look like?
So for trucks, we're looking at 4 years, about 4.5 years on the Crete and Schaefer side. On the Hunt side, that can tick up a little bit. The Hunt side, we tend to lean more on the 5.5 year plan. For trailers, usually about 7 years is when we decide to get rid of them. About 7 year cycle on those.
So your customer base can kind of somewhat anticipate what's coming if they've worked with you in the past and a little bit more.
Yeah. Yep. Right now it's kind of an influx. I still get emails from people asking for 2021s, and I haven't had a 2021 since, I think this time last year. So, we tend to move through stuff rather quickly.
Now, I think we've kind of hit some of this, but we'll make this just a two-parter question. I'll ask these two at the same time, but I know it's when Crete specs a truck, how early are you thinking about the eventual resale value? Now, hey, we've talked, you're kind of set for the lanes. The specs are going to be what the specs are going to be. But I guess let's focus more on what specs historically have helped, your equipment perform best in the secondary market. What are some things that you guys see work best?
So from that standpoint, yes, we do look at it, but those conversations kind of get put secondary because first and foremost, we're a trucking company, right? And so we want the trucks to perform best for what we actually do. I joke around with coworkers. I don't think there's more than 30 people in our company that know who I am or know what I do. It's because I'm not involved in that trucking side of the world. And so the way we spec our trucks is first and foremost to make sure that they perform at the highest efficiency for us. And then secondary to that, we have looked at things on the back end, such as increasing the torque on our trucks. We're at 425 horsepower, but we're at that 750 torque with a bigger drive line, because years ago we weren't at that and we had the smaller drive line and it kind of hurt us. So that was something that we kind of found out and made that subtle change to it. And the other thing that really helps us is just the simplicity of the trucks. We're not putting a bunch of bells and whistles on these things. It's just a straightforward fleet truck that, if mom and pop trucking company need to replace a few units, they're not going to get something that maybe they've never had before with extra, features on them or two-tone paint jobs or whatever it might be. They're just kind of just straightforward double bunk sleepers.
Yeah, so you're interesting. You're first and foremost, you're worried about efficiency for your fleets, right? And then, on the backside, you have the resale, but that's really not necessarily affecting the way you order up front. Then is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Mm.
You also, we look at a lot of discussion lately about drivers, hard to find drivers, too many drivers, that kind of things. Does the specs of the truck, does that affect somewhat of who you're hiring also? Does that play a role in keeping people in the seats?
No, not really. I mean, I think we've completely gone away from manual trucks. There might be a handful still in the fleet. When I first came on, we had more than fair share. I would say upwards of 20% of the fleet was a manual transmission. And that was to just keep our drivers happy. We had a lot of older drivers who just didn't want to switch over. And, we do our driver surveys every year. And that was one of the things that they kept saying they liked. So our ownership group decided to just keep going with it. And now I think they are gone. From a driver shortage position, I'll say it from where we look at it from. I can't speak to other fleets and how they look at it, but our number one company principle is safety first and foremost. And so from our standpoint, there's a shortage of drivers that don't meet or exceed our safety standards. And so it's becoming harder to hire quality drivers.
Right.
When you find them, you got to do everything you can to keep them.
Yep. I know our recruiting
a good driver keeps the company rolling, right?
Yeah. We have some good drivers, and we have a great team of operations and sales where, they're busting their tails every single day to keep these men and women moving, and they do a fantastic job of it.
That's awesome. On your fleet, what's the typical target mileage or age when you guys plan on exiting the equipment? I know you, just personally in the last couple of years, I've seen you shift to meet demands where you guys can. But again, you're a trucking company first and foremost.
Yeah, so I would say when I first started, it was in that 450 to 480 range. And then as you kind of said, demands have shifted, so we've kind of shifted with it. And so now we're in that 400 to 450 range, I would say. Now that all could change because remember, these are COVID era trucks, so we didn't get them on time. So we're having to pull them a little earlier. And when it comes to just turning over the fleet, just the timing of it this year has kind of been a little bit different than what we normally like. But somewhere in that range is where you'll typically find our trucks.
Has any of the pre-sale talk of 2027, does that factor in all with the orders that you guys are putting in the next year?
No. So,
okay.
We kind of look at it from a 5-year standpoint. We shouldn't get as many trucks as we wanted to during those COVID years. And many other fleets are in that same position that we are right now. And so our ownership kind of made it a focus over the last couple of years to invest in new equipment and get those purchases moving on the order boards to get back to where we kind of like seeing our equipment be. Our average truck age is 1.9 years and trailers are 3.7. So we see a lot of benefit in maintaining our average age targets from a driver satisfaction standpoint, from an equipment uptime, lower maintenance costs, and then being able to, on the back end, being able to sell our equipment where they're not as beat up, there's not as many miles, stuff like that. So when we're putting them back into the used market, we can kind of keep all that in the back of our minds with how we're doing things.
Right.
You touched on something there with maintenance costs. Just curious, how do you maintain cost curves, your maintenance cost curves? Do they influence your decisions to keep running versus selling, or is that all pretty much handled with warranty?
It's pretty much all handled with warranty. Internally, we have a lot of trucks, so there are a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. And so we've got a system set up to where it's like, are we going to fix this truck, or does the cost outweigh that benefit.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, fix the truck, get it back out on the road, or hey, it's a 2022, miles are a little low. Let's get it to this fixable point and then sell it. And we'll see what we can do with it on that side and put it out in the marketplace with, hey, this truck has XYZ going on with it. We fixed WXYZ is what it is, and let's see if we can get a deal done on it.
So you do the majority of that maintenance on your own that is not covered by warranty repairs, then? You have a shop at each one of the different entities?
Yeah, so I sell out of 12 different terminals around the country, and then I believe we have mid to upper 20s total for terminals around the country. And so we prefer to do all the maintenance ourselves, because then we can control costs, we can control everything for our drivers. Stuff happens, and we know it's going to. So we have actually a whole division called Road Call. That something happens, driver calls in, hey, your closest truck stop is 5 miles down the road. There's a Freightliner shop, 10 miles down the road. Get there, get it parked, and then we'll kind of address it in the morning.
So, here's a conversation I've been hearing out there is we're hearing more fleets choosing to keep their units right now, or to keep running them, or even just cold stack them, versus selling or bringing them out into the market. What impacts do you foresee as more fleets decide not to pull?
It's going to be a big impact to the used market, in my opinion. The fleets that are doing that definitely have their reasons for it, whether that's the cost of a new truck sale, maybe the used market is down kind of like it is right now. And it's like, okay, we'll just hang on to them, or a combination of the two. But what I think we're going to start seeing is a lot of higher mileage trucks coming out into the marketplace, whether that's, and everybody's definition of higher mileage is different. My definition is in between 525 and 650 is kind of where I put that number. Cause then once you hit sevens, that's a whole different world of a used truck and kind of where that thing's going to find a home. And so I think that's going to have a big impact on what's available to the common end user. Now, on a positive note, I think that if you have fleets that are regularly trading or regularly wholesaling, and they're in that, let's call it 300 to 450 range, those are going to start bringing a premium dollar the more that these high mileage units are out there. And we're working through that right now, kind of with the liquidation of some companies around the country. We've all seen the headlines with that stuff, and seeing some of the auction results. There was one sent out last week where I'm looking at it, it's like, whoa, that's a lot of newer equipment, a lot of 23s, 24s. There was even some 25s in that sale. And those are going to be fewer and far between, in my opinion. Just a little bit harder to find at the end of the day.
So is that something you're monitoring quite closely then, Dan, as the auction prices? Certainly you guys have connections to other fleets, so you understand maybe what they're doing with idled units or units that they're parking right now at this point. How much does that impact your decision on selling or timing?
Not a ton, to be honest with you. But we're monitoring, and I'll go on a little caveat here. When it comes to, and I tell everybody this, when it comes to those auction values, unless you're actually physically at the auction and you see that piece of equipment, take that number with a grain of salt, because, it could say, a 2022 Freightliner, Cascadia, double bunk, DT12 with a DD15, basically my spec, right, with 400,000 miles on it and sold for 38. And then the next line down says virtually the exact same thing and sells for 50. Why? Like what we're missing something here. Why did one go for 38 and one go for 50? And so we do monitor that. When it comes to other companies, we do monitor what's coming out into the marketplace. I do for sure. I'm a big proponent of kind of knowing what's going on, who's going to make the next move, because it's not like I'm doing this every couple months where it's like, hey, Scott, hey, Steve, I've got, 400 units that I need to get rid of. This is an everyday kind of constant movement for us. So when something does hit the marketplace, I tend to stay pretty tuned in to what's going on and, calling people and trying to figure out like, okay, where's their pricing at? What are we doing, to fight for that business and get our stuff moved compared to another fleet's units.
Well, logistically speaking, you're not that terrible far away from 10 Roads, are you? Who's working on liquidating?
No, I'm not. Mm-mm. Everything I know about them, well-run company, but a lot of their trucks, and this is going back to when I was on the fleet sales side at the Mac dealership, was they didn't buy warranty on units, and they were teams, right? It was that mail hauling side. Right. So it just racked up the miles really, really fast. And then they would pull them. It was a high mile number. And then they'd pull them and do their thing with liquidating them. So that's a lot of pieces of equipment that's going to hit the market come, what would that be, February sometime? I think the article said January 30th was the last day. So that's going to be a lot of equipment. But I don't know the percentage of like what's on the newer side and what's on that higher mileage standpoint. Same thing with the trailers, because being a mail hauler, they've got some different rules that they have to abide by, when it comes to specs and everything. So that'll be an interesting one to kind of watch moving forward. That hit our local community pretty hard. There are a lot of employees down there. So, it's just, if you know Omaha, it's just literally right across the river. The office is on your way to the airport. It's right there.
That kind of plays into it on the auction stuff too. I'm really interested to see where it goes. And what I was thinking when you were talking about auctions is it's hard. There's a lot of wonderful auctions out there that they can report on it and try to give you a sense of feel so you can bid from home and feel good about it. I'm kind of old school when it comes to auctions. I like going to them, but I gotta go crawl around the truck if I'm gonna stick a neck out. But I think what we're seeing is, I was looking at auction results this week, and I can't remember which one, but there was a lot of alarming stuff where I was like, oh my gosh, those prices are 10, 15 grand under market. What's going on? Did people not show up? But when you take a step back, I think it's a lot of repos that are starting to hit the market right now, and they're going through as is. Maybe they have warranty, but they're not doing work. And then it's the guys with boots on the ground that are bidding them accordingly. And it comes across as a shocker, just like you said, when there's no rhyme or reason that next number on the line is significantly out of whack. It's like, well, what happened there? So,
right.
Yeah. You already addressed that you guys, when you guys sell, you're primarily direct to dealers. You don't really mess with auctions, and retail is not so much external. Maybe you will get one of your own drivers into a truck, but to focus on that segment for dealer direct, what makes a dealer or a buyer preferred partner from your standpoint? What makes a good relationship there for you?
Scott, I think you could answer this for me. It's straight up honesty. I'm about as brutally honest as it comes with this stuff. I'm going to tell you straight up what it is, and I'm not going to beat around the bush with it. Just the honesty of it. If you raise your hand for 5 trucks, let's say, I'm going to honor that. And, I understand things happen in this world, where it's like fly by night guy just disappeared, no clue where he went. I can't take those units. I fully understand that. But when it's 3, 4, 5, 6 times that's happening, that's when my ears start to perk up, and it's like, all right, what's really going on here? My favorite is honestly when I get my own trucks chopped back to me. I love it. And, I just had it happen a couple weeks ago. I sent out my list, and about 2-3 hours later, never heard of this person before, the only thing that got deleted was the VIN number, like my same stock numbers, everything. And the price was at $3 grand higher than where I was or something like that. And I just started laughing. I was like, good luck. Like, if you can move them, move them. That, and just kind of the being able to work with each other. If an issue pops up, I don't need a phone call or an email blasting me about it. I like to think I'm pretty darn fair when it comes to this stuff where, hey, this needs addressed, especially, and I welcome them with open arms, an inspection, because there's stuff that we miss, like any shop, that it's going to happen. But if it's body damage, stuff like that, let's just work through it. I don't need to go round and round. It's, hey, get me an estimate. Let me take a look at it, and I'll find a fair way to help you out on this, because if I can just piggyback off of it, kind of what our standard is, if you don't mind, for what we're selling our trucks at Freightliner trade terms. And that's what I live by. So for those that are kind of unaware, I can go into it a little bit, but you're better off just actually calling a Freightliner dealer and getting the one pager from them, because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, brakes are 12, 30 seconds. Tires are at 10. No more than $1,000 of body damage per unit. So that's not, if you buy 5 trucks, it's $1,000 total. It's $1,000 per unit and stuff like that. No leaks, no nothing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And the reason why we do that is because we do trade back to Freightliner occasionally throughout the year. And so that's what we have to live by. So if we set one standard, then it's the same across the board. We don't have to worry about it. It's our shops know, hey, we're getting to this standard. We're not doing it for, a sale truck, but we're 10 steps higher for a trade truck. It's just the same all across the board with it. But I would say just, honesty and just being able to work through stuff and, kind of honoring what you say you're going to do would be my answer to that question. And
hey, from my experience, I mean, you guys have a great program over there, and it's never an argument with you. It's a conversation. And I think that's what's been working well, right?
Yeah.
Just coming off convention, freight rates is the big thing that we're all watching, right? I mean, where's that going? What's happening? And of course that impacts your companies financially. I don't know how much spot versus contracts work you guys have, and maybe that's not even something that you're involved in, but it definitely affects your buyers, right? And those that are going to be seeking out equipment from you. And I guess I'm kind of curious what you think for Q1 of 26 coming at us. Are you getting any sense from anyone right now that maybe there's a little bit more of an appetite than there has been in the fourth quarter of 2025?
What's your crystal ball saying?
Yeah.
Well, if we think back to this year, I think all of our crystal balls got thrown out the window in about June, and, nobody ever tried thinking about it again. I actually had a conversation with my boss about this the other day, and I just go, how are things looking? And he just said, they're okay. Some days are better than the next, but freight rates and volumes continue to be a challenge for everyone in the industry. And so it's pretty hard to predict what 2026 will bring, but this great freight recession has got to end at some point, right? Whether that's tariffs being walked back or shippers and driving or hauling companies kind of come to that conclusion where it's like, okay, this is what we got to be at. This is the way things have to be. And everyone is working on, very thin margins or even losing money on some of these routes. And so there's really no more room for motor carriers to take less rates. A lot of them are holding on tight to this. When I was out in San Diego, it was interesting. The hotel we were at, everybody listening knows, like, we were right on the harbor, right? I saw one ship in 4 days, one cargo ship in 4 days. Mm-hmm. And you know how technology pings where you're at. And so, you're sitting through scrolling Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you start getting some of the local news feeds or whatever. And I cannot remember the exact number, but at the time, somebody had reported that the amount of ships coming in to the port of San Diego was 17% less than what it was the year before. And I don't know if that number was the exact number I read, but anything over 3% is a big number, right? Just with the amount of cargo those ships hold. So I just thought that was fascinating that there's just not a lot of stuff coming back.
How close are you to that intermodal market coming out of port? I mean, I know you do a lot of household goods, but how many stops do they make before they get to you?
We pick up from the warehouse.
Okay.
So
I
don't
total
really do anything.
guess, maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but man, a ship hits port, how long until that becomes Crete freight?
That one I don't know, because so like on the Crete side, it's 100% contract. We don't do anything on the spot market, anything like that. So we work with our vendors and our companies that we have contracts with. The Schaefer side, virtually the same thing.
Okay.
Very, very little spot rate. I want to say less than 1% on that side. Same thing with Hunt. It's virtually all contract. So I'm not 100% sure when that time frame starts hitting.
I didn't know if there was a correlation that if you see them stacking up, if you know that means there's going to be a big something coming when they do come in.
No, the way we view it is trailer utilization. And so we have our big trailer pool that we're pulling from, and our operations team actually got involved with a project earlier this year where they were looking at how many trailers had been sitting for more than 30 days at a customer's warehouse. And we were using that as a standpoint to kind of like, let's get these things moving. Let's get them loaded, stuff like that, because that kind of transitions back into the spot rate conversation with companies saying, well, I can get it done cheaper. I can get it done cheaper. I can get it done cheaper. So they just keep loading trailers. And so we kind of took the initiative to, push that ball forward, and either we're going to get them loaded or we're going to come get them and I'm going to sell them is virtually what it turned into. So
makes sense. Well, I was going to say, and I don't know if this even fits into that, but I know there's conversations at times where it's like, does it make more sense to put it on a train, or the spot rates, but I don't know if that there's even a conversation you guys ever even have with contracted work.
That's what I was thinking of earlier, at the convention. Craig Fuller from Sonar, he talked about that intermodal had picked up. Part of the reasoning for that was just to delay some of the inventory or items going to getting to a storage facility and just sitting there, right? So my team and we just had a meeting with Sonar the other day, and they could kind of evaluate spot rates based on freight lanes. And it was kind of interesting. You talked about out of the ports, that was really poor right now, but the Midwest was really, really solid. So that was just kind of a unique perspective, because we on our end don't always see the freight movement or all the, stuff that, your companies are watching when you're trying to bid out contracts or pick up spot moves, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of interesting to see that.
From the fleet standpoint, are you guys seeing any type of indicators that freight or demand is going to stabilize or improve? I mean, I know a lot of the analysts are saying Q3, maybe a little something happens here in Q1, but for the most part, Q3 seems to be the focal point.
Yeah, we're at a point for us that historically is kind of one of our lower times. We finish up kind of that Christmas rush with the final deliveries for the year, and then we run into a time frame of our drivers want to be home, right? We're coming into Christmas time, we're coming into New Year's, and that's the same at the warehouses, right? I don't know how long they take, kind of like what OEM truck factories look like, where they take that kind of 2-week sabbatical to give workers time off to be with their families. And so, usually from about now until like mid-January, I want to say, is what I've been hearing around the company, is kind of a little bit of a slower period anyway, and then it starts picking back up again as we start getting out of the holidays and going there. My boss always jokes there's light at the end of the tunnel, but every day he doesn't know if that light is going to be brighter or dimmer at the end of the day. So right now he's kind of on that front. Scott, what you had mentioned was, maybe back half of next year is where we're going to kind of see this kind of lift, I guess would be a better way to put it. But then again, who knows?
Real quick, I'm just curious, you brought up seasonal freight. just kind of as a median average, would you guys say seasonal freight's been picking up this year? Is it slowing down this year? Kind of just average, or?
Yeah. I mean, there's days that, I've talked to our ops teams and it's like, yeah, we're busy right now. This is great. Busiest we've been in 3 months. And then you talk to them a week later and it's, they're kind of, yeah, we're moving stuff. So it's fine. I mean, it's average, but nothing to, kind of write home about.
Well, we've definitely got a little ways into this podcast, and we still haven't brought up anything on regulations yet. And just kind of curious from you guys' standpoint, there's been a lot of talk about the non-domicile drivers, that kind of thing, non-English speaking drivers. From a fleet standpoint, is there some changes or effects that you guys have noticed here in the last month or so?
Yeah. Going back to our first company principles of safety first and foremost, I have some kind of stats here, and these were all pulled from FreightWave articles. I kind of did my homework here. I kind of want to speak out of turn with it, but from a non-domiciled CDL, these CDL mills, however you want to, describe them, there's a lot of loopholes that are kind of being exploited right now. And so some of this cleanup is actually a good thing, for both the trucking company and just the, general public out on the motorways from a safety standpoint. I know we've all seen those stories about, the U-turn in the middle of the interstate and, all that stuff that happens there. But there's some really interesting stats out there. So there's 2 ways to basically attain your CDL, essentially. And the traditional path is attending one of approximately 2,100 properly state licensed CDL schools that have comprehensive training programs. Like a legitimate school like 160 Driving Academy. It's 160 hours of comprehensive training. And then there's the deregulated path, where you receive minimal training from around 32,000 self-registered training providers, where it can be as little as a few hours before they send you off to your local DMV to get your license. And so that is helping kind of clean up some of that safety pressure that's on the industry right now for sure. I remember during UTA, I can't remember exactly who asked the question, but they were talking about how, that sometimes hurts dealerships, when it comes to sales, because they are selling to maybe not English speakers or somebody buying their truck for the first time, trying to go into business for themselves, whatever it might be. And, that's just one of those loopholes that maybe needs to get a little bit tighter with it. From a regulation standpoint, there's a lot of weaknesses that are being exploited right now. And here's a example for you. So company with bad safety history closes an old company. Jim's Trucking closes, right? The next day they can open up a new one under Jill's Trucking, and it's a completely clean slate. Hide any past violations, avoid any audits, bypass any investigations, and get back onto the road as if nothing happened at all. So that's one of those ones that really needs to get tightened up on and make sure that some of these, we'll say fraudulent carriers, fraudulent CDL holders, they can't keep doing that. And, dealerships see it time and time again when it comes to that stuff. The same guy comes in, oh, he had a wreck. That happens. No big deal. Okay, let me get your invoice information and title information, and it's a completely different name, right? And so something like that really needs to be taken care of. Going back to freight rates, that's also a race to the bottom with some of those carriers where they don't care. The company is based out overseas somewhere. Drivers are here. They live in their truck. They don't have any other expenditure, so they get paid a lot less than what a traditional American company would have to pay. And these guys will work for pennies on the dollar versus nickels on the dollar. And so here's an interesting stat from you on that. So there are 1,164,93,000 motor carriers listed as for hire in our country. There are 757,000 freight brokers authorized for hire. And as of, December 5th of 2025, there are 206 of them registered at 30 North Gold Street in Sheridan, Wyoming as their primary address. And at one point, there was more than 500 carriers and brokers using this one address for their business. It's wild what kind of the loopholes that people can find to be able to undermine the marketplace. And that's kind of what people are finding out the hard way, because we all made a lot of money selling trucks in those COVID years. Scott, you remember that vividly. A truck that was worth 60, you were selling for 100,000 seemingly overnight.
It was insane, the numbers that were going around for trucks at that time.
Yeah.
But it was all just demand driven. It was a shut up and take my money market.
Yeah, it definitely was. And now we're seeing the results of that. But
that's, and not to go too far down pricing in general, but we're still in unprecedented times. We've never been in the shadow of a historical market like that. And nobody really knows where it can trend to, because I think when it comes to analytics, a lot of the times it's not really where we're going, but let's break down where we've been and how we got here. And a lot of it's speculative, and there is no tried and true crystal ball, because it's an ever changing landscape. Policy shifts, that's unprecedented waters. Global disasters, or you name it. There's just so many factors that you really can't pinpoint. What's this truck going to be worth in 3 months? But all you can do is just work the trends. But yeah, I'm with it. Those are crazy times.
Yeah. And I think now the pressure is mounting on the OEMs to kind of get back to that regular percentage difference between what's trade and what's new, right? It used to be, 40%, something like that would be the value of it. And it seems like it had dropped to darn near 60 or 70%. And so I think that pressure is starting to mount where we need to get back to that. And, when it comes to what the market's doing, it's anybody's guess, especially with some of these shutdowns and liquidation sales that are happening, where it's
so that
just one of those things.
That comes back to our option conversation, right? You can't just go off of this is the number I heard on the year, model, and miles, because what's the story behind it? And yes, trucks are depreciating assets. They always go down in value. And there's that one-off time, and I don't know, maybe we see it again in our lifetime where they increase as much as they did. But I don't know. That's just it. You can't pinpoint them, and you gotta follow the supply and demand. At the end of the day, we all trade soybeans.
Not different on the retail side either, is it? You look online and you see the retail pricing variance is drastic or even larger than what it is on the auction. And, some of that's just where maybe some of us dealers got in on purchasing units, or maybe what a lease company has written off so far for income against that unit. But again, the retail is no better indicator right now if you look online than what the auctions are. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. I think another thing that in my opinion really affects it are fleets that trade. They get their number, they're happy with it. They've been doing that way for 20, 30 years, right? Yeah. They've got a system that works for them. For the fleets that don't necessarily trade every year, or maybe they're every 4 years and they kind of just flip their fleet of 50 trucks or whatever it might be. One thing that I've noticed over the years is that when you're doing that, instead of just flipping it out there, hey, I've got these 50, right? And it's not somebody that has been diving into the marketplace on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they go look at Truck Paper or Commercial Truck Trader or whoever. It's like, oh, here's the average. Here's my depreciation. I'll take this number. And they tell, Joey in accounting to go move these units, but he doesn't know anything about them. He doesn't know what the marketplace is doing. And then you kind of a race to the bottom, right? It's like he's going to try and get the most money he can out of it, but his boss told him he needs to get these things moved by Christmas. So he's going to take kind of the first deal that pops up to him that makes sense And then it kind of goes through what I call a 30-day relearning period. Scott, I know you and me I think we've talked in circles about that before, where it's like, truck deal gets done, market finds out about it, and easy numbers, it's 10 grand back of where the market's saying it should be, right? Well, everybody finds that out. They're like, oh no, that's where the market is now. That's where my trucks need to be. That's where XYZ fleet's trucks need to be. And I'll sit there and tell everybody, no, we're going to wait because it's going to trend back up, because what happens? Those trucks get flipped 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then magically we're back to where we started. It's just that somebody was the first through the door to get that deal, and then they start getting flipped to different dealers who need them for whatever reason, or, they get flipped to another wholesaler. And then about 30 days later, we're back to where we started. Now, in today's world, that kind of stinks, because I feel like that's happening about every other day with everything coming out into the marketplace. And, go back to auctions again. It's like, okay, well, we were doing good last week. Now this week we're back down lower than where it should be. And so, and also kind of how can I put this? The overvaluing of certain specs, I think, is playing a key factor into this as well. The spec that pops into my head is APUs, right? These electric APUs that fleets have decided to put on to their units, where fleets that are buying on the used side, they really value that. Well, that's still a man-made product. That's still going to break down. That's still going to have maintenance costs to it. How much value is that really adding by coming onto the truck versus, hey, we can just go get one and put it on for you?
I'll challenge it a little bit, because there is value in it. A brand new APU, I don't know, last time I put one on a truck was around 12, 14 grand. Mm-hmm. And they typically, the resale value on one, I'll just throw a number out there, I think it typically is $1,000 to $2,000 what people would appraise an APU at. But that's also, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's on there, go fix it. But I think where your value on an APU is your engine hours. And I know, depending on where the market's at, that can really fluctuate, but I can tell you, as of late, engine hours are a hot topic, and they are devaluing trucks. And I know at the end of the day, if you buy a 400,000 mile truck, you're expecting to see the 12,000 hours. But if it rolls in, it's got that 18, 19, 20K. Your value is almost cut in half. And again, that could be today's market. But I think that's where your value is extending the longevity of the truck.
Yeah. And I guess I'm biased because we don't run APUs, and we do monitor our,
and you guys keep your hours. You do a great job on that. And
I guess I'm a little biased in that sense of, we do monitor that, and we have put different specs into the truck that help us keep those hours down, especially in the winter time, or in the peak of summer, when it's 110 in Texas at 10 o'clock at night. So
100%.
Yeah, so it's like we've taken steps to that. But I do agree with you on that standpoint. It's just from talking to people, I agree it's $1,000 to $2,000, right? Just for that fact. But when I'm being told it's a 5, 7, 9 number, it's like, yeah, you're kind of scratching up the wrong tree with that one, just because I just don't see it there.
Let's see, we've talked on that. We got just a couple more questions here. So how do you see fleet disposition strategies evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's going to be wild. It is. I truly think so. Mainly because they're holding on to them longer. And until we can get our hands as an industry wrapped around this pricing problem, and I'm talking more on the new side right now than on the used, where fleets can traditionally buy 25 new trucks a year, right, and feel comfortable with that purchase and making money, you're going to see those overall averages tick up, and you're not going to see as many units hit the ground. And, if you're looking at the major fleets out there, even they're slow right now pulling stuff. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know kind of how this is going to work out, and what's going to come down the pipe at the end of the day. So I think there's going to be a lot of high mileage units and a lot more. I would love to hear from like OEM dealers on how many of these fleets are coming back to them right now and adding warranty. Like what percentage of fleets are doing that? Are they, they're coming in, they're buying their 10 trucks instead of 25, but are they adding an extra 2-3 years of warranty onto a unit to get it to 650 or whatever it is? And
here's an issue, and I wish I had the exact facts so I could speak more educated here, but I think I can get kind of close here. So a really interesting one is if you go look at truck paper right now, just for a gauge of market. And there's a lot of other sites we could use. This is the one I like to use a lot. I'm on here and I go, let's see a 2019 sleeper and newer, right? Open to miles, open to make, model, all the other stuff. But right now, and the reason I'm going with 19, let's talk a truck almost everybody could agree is a financeable year model and newer. Yes, I know there's situations that can go older, but a 19 and newer. There's 19,233 trucks in the market right now. And that's aggressive. And to your point, I think there's a lot of sandbagging going on right now. A whole bunch of different reasons of how we could have gotten here, what we got, but I think there's probably about 10,000 trucks that still need to enter the market. Maybe it's 7, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7, but it's a lot of trucks that I think need to enter a saturated market right now. And what do you do with that? I mean, is it time to pay the piper? Do we need to wait for demand to come back around? I mean, have we ever seen a model like this that we can even, look towards?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with your numbers. My boss talks to a lot of different, fleets around the country, and a lot of them are saying, hey, Q1, we're pausing, right? We've paused this long. I know you guys have heard that too from different fleets where, hey, we're not going to buy anything. We're not going to pull anything. We're just kind of going to go. We're going to wait and see what happens here in Q1. Are the freight rates going to come back? Are spot rates going to come up? How are these regulations going to affect not only my company, but the other company down the road? It seems like every single day we imagine a wall of knobs, right? Somebody turns a knob to get us back into the green. Well, as soon as we do that, about 2 hours later, 4 other knobs go the other direction. We're back into the red. And nobody knows which knob to turn to keep us on that green side of the line.
Yeah.
So it's, and it's going to be up to each and every fleet on how they approach this. And there is no right or wrong answer for it because you have to do what's best for your trucking company.
Right.
Well, the truck market got sandbagged back in, was it 23? Was that the post-COVID where things started backing up? Was it 22 or 23? Maybe 22 is when it slowed down. But I think
22 is when it slowed down. 23 is when it hit a brick wall.
That's when we got backed up. And
June.
I want to say, and this is the number I was looking for, but I want to say it was like 23 or 24,000 units in the market on a financeable truck is where we got oversaturated.
Yep.
And I'm just, spitballing here, but shit, are we potentially close to that?
I think we are close, but I also think we need to look back in history on how we as an industry kind of fixed that ourselves, by saying, hey, this is what it is. If you need a truck, this is where the price point is. This is where everything's going to be. We're not going to throw in, a bunch of mud flaps and a bunch of rubber mats, and I'm going to give you 50% off warranty because I need to get this deal done. We said as an industry, this isn't going to happen, and we're just going to work through this truck by truck by truck. But the other thing too is that the international market came back to us at that time too for a lot of those higher mileage units, and a lot of companies were able to make their contacts in Mexico or South America or Canada or wherever. And it's like, hey, I've got these 50. Give me your number. Like, I want these things gone. Let's make a deal where everybody's happy. And it took time. It definitely did. I mean, that was in probably about June of 23, and it didn't come back for 6 months, 8 months. But as an industry, we did it. And I think that's kind of what we need to get back to.
Somehow we need to overlay the new truck production too for the last 5 years, because it hasn't been anything stellar at all in any of those 5 years. So, yeah, we look at those numbers like what you guys mentioned. When you get over 20,000, it starts to gets a little harder to breathe. But again, we don't have all those new trucks entering the market. We're going to have a backlog here for a short term, but then it could get pretty sparse for a little bit. So, which is kind of an interesting question that I'd like to dig into that you had mentioned earlier, with the extended warranties, right? Because again, it's just like any other market. If you're not selling new units, you need parts and service to be making the difference and offsetting the sales. And so does that play some value into them extending warranties? On the resale side, I feel like I'm seeing more of that from the OEMs, where they're offering to the next user that there's going to be a warranty with that unit. Good question there. I think we should dig into that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. Going back to your comment about the new market. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was an article on Transport Topics yesterday talking just about this, and I believe the number was down 47% year over year total. That's a large number. Right. I mean, 10% everybody can swallow. 47% is not sustainable by any stretch.
No.
So when these fleets are buying, they're buying, I'm not going to say minimal, but they're buying exactly what they need, right? Not trying to flip a few extra, not trying to grow a little bit. It's, hey, get rid of what we need to get rid of and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, a lot of good discussion points here. Dan, definitely want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a real treat having you on. Great to know you're not that far away from Northwest Iowa, so that's pretty cool.
Oh no, I'm just down the road, and I made a lot of trips into Iowa as a kid. My brother was a Cyclone, so we
there you go.
We made that drive to Ames a lot of times through the years.
Nice.
Well, can't thank you enough for coming on. Thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you for letting us pick your brain. And I think this wraps up podcast number 6. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.